The Atari 2600 has literally hundreds of arcade ports in its library. And sure, you could play the original game through emulation of some sort, but there's just something special when playing the Atari versions. So here are Atari 2600 arcade ports that are totally worth playing. Starting with Asteroids. Developed in 1979, this is the 7th highest grossing arcade game of all time. You play as Captain Edward Log, who has been ordered to clear this area of space of asteroids and UFOs. The hyperspace button can jump you to another part of the screen, but it doesn't always work. The 2600 version does a good job of replicating the original's mechanics and includes tons of different game variations. Special abilities like hyperspace, shields, and flip will sometimes get you out of a bind. The paths of the asteroids aren't quite as random here, but still. Asteroids for the 2600 is a great and fun game that is definitely worth playing. Battlezone. This is a vector-based game where you destroy enemy tanks and UFOs. The original has some of the earliest 3D in a video game and dual control sticks to simulate tank movement. The 2600 version doesn't try to look like the arcade at all, though. Gameplay is basically the same, where you're blasting tanks and UFOs, but instead of being inside the tank, you're sitting on top of it. It's kind of weird. Overall, it's a fun take on the original arcade game. Berzerk, the 1980 Stern classic game that is now owned by Atari. Basically a top-down version of Doom. You travel from room to room, shooting robots and avoiding the evil Otto. Really, is he that evil? He looks pretty happy to me. The 2600 game is one of the earliest that I felt was arcade perfect. Well, at least in the way it looks. There's no voice or diagonally shooting robots in the original version, but the new version released at the same time as the 2600 Plus rectifies those problems. Definitely a fun arcade conversion. Centipede. I think this is Atari's most enjoyable arcade game ever. Who doesn't love Centipede? You control a bug shooter with your trackball, blasting spiders and fleas and scorpions, and of course the multi-segmented Centipede. The 2600 version has an awesome title screen that really doesn't match the look of the original arcade game, but are you interested in how well it looks or how well it plays? And really, this version has the frantic gameplay of the original, although using a joystick isn't quite as much fun as using the trackball, though. Commando. Capcom's top-down shooter where you play as Super Joe blasting enemy soldiers and saving prisoners. It is Super Joe, right? Maybe he's the one from Bionic Commando? I don't remember. Anyway, the original arcade has some very detailed graphics that really can't be matched by the Atari game, but it does retain the basic formula of the original and has some incredible graphics of its own. Hey, at least the character looks like a person for a change. Crossbow. Originally a light gun game from Exidy, you must protect your group of friends from objects and critters and enemies and all that by shooting those said objects, critters, and enemies and all that. The graphics in the Atari 2600 game are nothing short of amazing. There are 6 different stages, each with their own set of challenges. Honestly, I find this one to be a blast to play. Crystal Castles. You play as Atari's only ever mascot character named Bentley Bear. Use the trackball to help him collect all the gems on the screen before they're eaten or picked up by weird balls or gem-eating vertical snakes or trees and the evil witch Berthelda, something like that. Obviously, the 2600 version can't match a candle to the arcade's graphics or controls, but it does a decent job of replicating the gameplay and even the sounds. Also, I think there's 16 different stages? That's pretty incredible. I used to play this one for hours and hours just to see how far I could get into it. Defender 2 or Stargate, whichever one you want to play. Williams Electronics' sequel to the popular Defender, this one amps up the difficulty and the controls. You still have smart bombs and hyperspace, but also Inviso? Huh, that's interesting. Oh, and the Stargate thing in the middle of the screen will jump you to the humanoid that's being captured. The 2600 game does a great job of capturing the look and feel of the original. This time you're not flying over a city like in Defender for the 2600. Controls are interesting though, since you have to use a second controller for the smart bombs, hyperspace, and Inviso. This one definitely looks like the arcade. It plays a little bit less, but it's still a lot of fun. Dig Dug. In this classic arcade game, you maneuver around in the dirt, trying to clean up your garden from the pukas and the figars. Really, I think they should be frigars because they, they try to fry you with their heat breath or whatever. You can use your pump to explode the enemies, or you can drop rocks on them. Either way, it works. The downside is if you wait too long, they'll just ghost right through the dirt and get you. So digging holes in the ground, it's, almost a moot point. The Atari 2600 game is not quite as good as the arcade. Obviously, it's far more limited as to where you can dig and move around. The graphics are minimal, but surprisingly, the sound and music is pretty good. Pumping up the monsters isn't quite as satisfying either because it looks like the sprite was just stretched. But, again, considering the limitations, this is a really fun port. Frogger, or in this case, the official Frogger. The original game is a certified classic. Hop your frog across the busy road and raging river to one of 5 homes. Now there's actually 2 versions of Frogger for the 2600. The one you want is the Starpath Supercharger version because it is absolutely incredible. But yeah, the Supercharger version of Frogger, the official Frogger, is definitely worth playing. Galaxian. The evolution of Space Invaders has the aliens on the run. Now they are highly offended that you're shooting at them and will turn to attack you. The Atari version is a very playable simulation of the arcade. Aside from the highly questionable yellow border around the screen, it's a great conversion of the original. Gravitar. This is a cross between Asteroids, Space War, and Lunar Lander. Your job is to destroy gun turrets and collect fuel, all while avoiding UFOs. However, the biggest enemy of the game is the gravity. It's constantly pulling you towards the ground, making the game extremely challenging, and not really in a good way either. I found the 2600 port very faithful to the original, even if the vector graphics were eliminated. You still control your ship, destroying turrets and UFOs while fighting the strong gravity. It's still basically the same game. I do really enjoy Gravitar, even if the gravity thing is slightly annoying. Ikari Warriors. SNK's top-down shooter game sees you as a soldier attempting to reach the village of Ikari. Well, that's what the Wikipedia says anyway. The Atari game is pretty amazing. Of course, it's not going to look like the original, but the gameplay is still very fun, and you can even drive a tank. Joust. Another Williams classic arcade game. This one has you riding an ostrich attacking enemy soldiers that ride buzzards. Yeah, it's kind of a weird concept, but hey, Atari's version is very well done, and it's a lot of fun. The only thing I don't care for is that the eggs just always float around on the screen. My ostrich has gravity, why don't the eggs? It makes it so much harder to get them when they're just floating all over the screen. I want them to stop. Junior Pac-Man. It's Junior's time to shine in this Namco Midway classic developed by GCC. The arcade game scrolls left and right, however the 2600 game scrolls up and down. The other difference between this and the other Pac-Man games is the bouncing bonus. It makes the dots more valuable and destroys power pellets if it touches one. A very tough game made more fun by the kiddie modes, if you ask me. Jungle Hunt. An almost forgotten classic by Taito, where you play as Tarzan. As an adventurer, out to rescue your girlfriend from cannibals. Swing on vines, swim the crocodile-infested river, climb the mountain of rocks, and jump past those hungry cannibals. The 2600 version captures all those stages quite well. And it even has some very impressive parallax scrolling. Kangaroo. In the game, you play as a mama kangaroo in an attempt to save her baby from a gang of monkeys. Her only weapon? A pair of boxing gloves that she uses to punch those monkeys. I really enjoy this game, and I think it's because it was Atari's answer to Donkey Kong, and I really wanted it to be successful. But, you know, I also love punching those monkeys. The 2600 version has all the same gameplay elements of the arcade, but the graphics are extremely basic. It only has 3 stages, but, you know, it's still pretty fun to play. Kung Fu Master. IREM's side-scrolling action fighting game looks and sounds great on the 2600. Multiple enemies appear on the screen at once, and you have to kick or punch them to advance. There's a boss at the end of the stage to defeat too. Now there's 5 stages, and I've only been able to get to stage 2 where the weird creatures appear, but you know, it's pretty crazy to think that this game is on the 2600. Mario Brothers. You play as Mario or Luigi Mario, clearing turtles, crabs, flies, and slip ice from the sewer, all while avoiding fireballs and collecting coins. You can't jump on top of the enemies like you can in Super Mario Bros., but instead you hit them from the bottom of the platform in order to knock them out. And after they're delirious, then you can jump on them and kick them off the platform. The 2600 game is actually very incredible. Mario looks and moves just as he should, which is pretty amazing for the 2600. Also appearing in the game are all the enemies and the bonus coin stage. This is by far the best Mario game on the 2600. Millipede. Atari's sequel to Centipede is just more crazy bug-blasting action. It's like someone gave the original game 10 double espressos. Graphics are simplified from the arcade, but it still has the DDT bombs, the single bug waves like bees or mosquitoes, annoying spiders, and action that absolutely will not quit. This is an awesome game. Missile Command. Defend your cities from missile attack in Atari's classic. Another early 2600 game that I feel is very much like the original arcade game. It's a little bit simplified because there's only one missile base to worry about, so it actually makes this game a little more fun. There's also several different difficulty variations too. I spent a lot of time playing this one back in the day. Moon Patrol. A side-scrolling shooting game from Williams Electronics where you pilot a buggy shooting alien saucers, avoiding rocks, and jumping over craters. The 2600 game has some cool parallax graphics and very fun gameplay. There's a hack that I made a few years ago called Moon Patrol Plus that fixes some of the graphics to make it look more like the arcade. Ms. Pac-Man. Midway or Namco's or GCC's sequel to the original Pac-Man game. Really not sure who gets the most credit for this one. Anyway, Miss Pac-Man is more than Pac-Man with a bow because she has multiple mazes, bouncing fruit, better monster enemies, and faster gameplay. The original Pac-Man game for the 2600 was a disappointment, but Atari wanted to make sure that this one was up to snuff, and it is. Fun and fast gameplay, even if the mazes are a departure from the arcade. Pengo. This is a rather clever action game from Sega where you play as a penguin pushing ice blocks into snow beads to advance to the next stage. You can push the 3 diamond blocks together or push the side walls to stun them. The 2600 game has all the fun gameplay of the original. Fortunately, the graphics are pretty basic, so the Atari version looks enough like the arcade. Music is good too, but it's a little repetitive. Phoenix. Shoot attacking alien birds in space. The first 2 waves of birds are smaller and relatively easy to battle. The 3rd and 4th stages have larger birds who can lose a wing and still come at you, so you have to shoot them right in the middle. I really love the Mothership boss battle. It's just so awesome, and I think it's one of the first boss battles in a video game. I really love the 2600 version. It's one of my favorites. The birds are just as annoying here as in the original, and the Mothership is there in the game. That's awesome. The overall gameplay is retained, and this is one of the best arcade ports for the 2600. Pole Position. Namco's F1 racing game that appeared in America under Atari's banner. It's a pretty simple game, so it's not surprising that there's really a great 2600 version. The road turns and moves a lot like the arcade, and the background adjusts with the perspective. The opponent's cars are not as detailed as I would like, but that doesn't detract from the fun gameplay. Popeye. Catch Olive Oil's hearts, notes, and letters, all while avoiding Bluto and the Sea Witch in Nintendo's popular arcade game. Yeah, no, it's not as popular as Donkey Kong. Grabbing the spinach to knock out Bluto is probably the most fun aspect of the game. The Atari version by Parker Brothers is surprisingly good. Sure, the graphics are weaker, but the gameplay is there, and it's actually pretty fun if you give it a chance. Q*bert. Gottlieb's cube color changing game where you play as a foul-mouthed orange ball with a big honker. Avoid balls, green guys, and Coily the snake. The Atari game is pretty good and fun, even if the graphics are really a little sparse. I do really wish that the platform would move diagonally towards the top instead of up and to the left or right. Still, this is a pretty fun and decent version of Q*bert. Roadrunner. You play as the Roadrunner who has to eat birdseed and escape from Wile E. Coyote. The only strategy in the game is to get Wile E. to stand in front of a truck so he'll get run over. Otherwise, he's all over you like stinking a monkey. The 2600 version is amazing. Graphics are very good and the characters look just as they should. There's even a little Looney Tunes music in here. If you can find a copy, definitely get it, because not only is it rare, it's also pretty fun. Space Invaders. This is it, the big daddy of killer apps, Taito's alien blasting game. The Atari 2600 was really launched due to the popularity of this one, and rightly so. It's better than the arcade in nearly every way. It has more color, better sound, and there's tons of different game variations. This is definitely my preferred version of this arcade classic game. Star Trek Strategic Operations Simulator. This one came out right after the motion picture, but Sega decided to make this more of an action game. Good idea. Travel from sector to sector protecting star bases from Klingon attackers. The 2600 game is fantastic, and it's really my favorite home conversion, even over the ColecoVision and Atari 5200 games. There's just something about the smoothness of the gameplay that sets it above the others. If only it had Mr. Spock's voice in it. Star Wars, the arcade game. Atari's Vector classic game based on the movie. But I have one question. Why was this released by Parker Brothers for the 2600 instead by Atari themselves? I don't know, that just doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, there's not much chance that the 2600 could replicate the original's 3D vector graphics, but this version does a decent job of matching the arcade gameplay, especially the trench stage. Sure, the TIE Fighter stage is a little lame, the tower stage is pretty good, but the trench stage is really, really good. I used to play this one for hours. Super Breakout. Atari's vast improvement over the original Breakout game has way more options. You can play the standard game, use double paddles, have multiple balls, or, my favorite, play a game with advancing bricks. Paddle control is smooth and accurate, and this game is very good for a single player with no friends like me. Tapper. The frantic root beer slinging game published by Midway. You must keep your customers happy by sliding root beers down the bar, catching their empty glasses, and collecting their tip money. The Atari version has amazing graphics and perfect gameplay. It even includes the bonus stage. Track and Field. Konami's button-destroying sports game where you compete in different events like the 100-meter dash, the javelin throw, and the dreaded high jump. The Atari game has a special controller included, but they're harder to find loose. It still works with the joystick though, but you'll look a little odd using it. Yeah! Oh, I lost. Some of the animation of the game is a little janky, but it's still a fun game and it plays great. Vanguard. A rather unique spaceship shooter published by Centauri. The twist is that your ship can fire in 4 different directions, and there are multiple stages before you reach the Gond.
Luther destroys the Gond.
The 2600 game is a lot of fun, and it's a great conversion. Honestly, though, the Gond is the easiest part of the game. It's no wonder why Luther destroys them. Warlords. Atari's classic 4-player Protect the Castle game. This one was actually released before the arcade game. It's kind of like Breakout, but in reverse. You use the paddle to block and launch fireballs against enemy castles. Hit the king inside and destroy them. This is by far the best paddle game ever created, and it's a blast with 4 players. Xenophobe. This shooter game by Midway has you clearing out alien-infested facilities with different weapons and characters. The 2600 game is one of the most fun versions, probably even more so than the Nintendo game. Sure, you can only choose one character, but who cares? They all play the same anyways. A pretty amazing arcade conversion for the Atari 2600. Alright, well there you have it, Atari 2600 arcade ports that are worth playing. What kind of memories do you have of playing these games? Please let me know down in the comments. I thank you for watching, take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye everyone.